The desert wind carried nothing but static that morning. Across 3 continents, military frequencies hummed with the kind of silence that precedes either disaster or legend. In a limestone operations bunker beneath the Zagros Mountains, a Army Special Forces captain named Rourke stared at a screen that showed 12 red icons flickering against a topographical map that looked like crumpled paper. His team was pinned. The extraction window was closing, and the only available close air support was a single A-10 Thunderbolt II that nobody wanted. The aircraft was 40 minutes out, piloted by someone the regional command had buried in rotation logs under 3 layers of bureaucratic discretion. Rourke didn't know her name yet. He didn't know that in 6 hours, her call sign would trend across secure military networks from Ramstein to Yokosuka. All he knew was that his men were dying in a valley that maps called empty, but which held more hostility per square meter than anywhere he'd ever operated. The Taliban had funneled his 12-man team into a dried riverbed using mortar fire and technical vehicles equipped with Russian heavy machine guns. Air support had been promised. Air support had vanished. Then this. The voice that crackled through his headset was calm, female, unrushed. It carried the kind of steadiness that made Rourke's jaw tighten because he'd heard that tone before, always from people who had never seen real combat, never felt the earth crack open under artillery, never had to decide which wounded man got the last IV bag. He keyed his mic with more force than necessary. Hawkeye 7, Dagger 1 actual. We need gun runs on the ridgeline danger close, how copy? Dagger 1 Hawkeye 7, I copy danger close. Acknowledge you have friendlies within 75 meters of target zone. Confirm. Her voice didn't waver. Rourke glanced at his tactical officer, a Tennessean named Voss who was already shaking his head. 75 meters. She was reading the minimum safe distance off a manual. This pilot had probably never fired a combat round outside a training range. Confirmed, Rourke said flatly. We're in the rock's northeast side. Targets are technical vehicles and dismounts on the south ridge. We're taking effective fire from multiple positions. I need you to make a gun run in the next 3 minutes or we will be overrun. Silence 2 heartbeats 3. Dagger 1 Hawkeye 7 is inbound. 30 seconds. Mark your position with infrared strobe. Keep your heads down. Something in her tone had shifted. Not louder, not harder, just different. Rourke pulled the infrared beacon from his vest and twisted it active. Above the valley, the sky was the color of bone, and somewhere in that pale emptiness, an aircraft was coming. He just didn't know yet that it was flown by a woman they'd tried to forget. The A-10 broke through the cloud layer at 8,000 feet, descending through thermals that rattled the airframe like a paint shaker. Major Alara Kine felt the turbulence in her teeth, but her hands remained steady on the stick. Below her, the terrain was a nightmare of wadis and ridgelines, heat shimmer rising off rock formations that looked like broken teeth. She'd studied this valley for 20 minutes during the flight in, memorizing elevations, likely firing positions, escape routes, old habits. The kind that got you labeled obsessive by evaluation boards who didn't understand that obsession kept people alive. Her heads-up display painted the world in overlays of green and amber. 12 friendly icons clustered in a dried riverbed. 18 probable hostiles spread across the southern ridge, plus 3 vehicles. The geometry was bad. The friendlies were pinned in a natural kill zone, and any gun run that missed by even 10 meters would chew through American bodies as easily as enemy ones. She adjusted her approach angle, calculating wind, altitude, weapons dispersal. The GAU-8 Avenger rotary cannon in the nose of her aircraft held 1,174 rounds. Each one was a depleted uranium penetrator the size of a soda bottle. Fire discipline would be everything. Dagger 1 Hawkeye 7 is visual on your infrared. I have your position. Beginning attack run. She rolled the aircraft into a dive, feeling the airframe shudder as she pushed past recommended stress limits. The A-10 was ugly, slow, built around its gun like a flying artillery piece. But it was hers. She'd logged more hours in this airframe than most pilots accumulated in a career, most of those hours in training ranges and support missions that never made it into after-action reports. They'd given her the scraps, the milk runs, the assignments that kept her qualified but invisible. She knew why. She'd known for 7 years, since the incident they'd buried under non-disclosure agreements and reassignments. The ridge materialized through her canopy. 3 technical vehicles, Toyota Hiluxes with DSHK heavy machine guns mounted in the beds. Figures moving between rocks, muzzle flashes winking like distant stars. She armed the cannon, felt the targeting pipper settle over the first vehicle. The range ticked down. 1,800 meters, 1,500, 1,200. Her finger rested on the trigger, breathing steady. Heart rate 68 beats per minute. In the back of her mind, a memory surfaced. Her father's voice teaching her to shoot clay pigeons on a ranch in Montana, telling her that the best shooters never rushed, never hesitated, never let emotion into the equation. Just math, just geometry, just consequence. She fired. The GAU-8 roared. 70 rounds per second, each one screaming downrange at 3,400 feet per second. The sound was legendary, a thunderous belch that every ground soldier recognized instantly. From Rourke's position in the riverbed, it sounded like God tearing a bedsheet. The first technical vehicle disintegrated. Metal, glass, and human matter vaporizing in a cloud of pink mist and shrapnel. The second vehicle tried to move, engine gunning, but Alara was already adjusting, the pipper tracking with mechanical precision. Another burst. The vehicle flipped, tumbling end over end before exploding in a fireball that sent black smoke climbing. Rourke watched through binoculars, his mouth open. The gun run was surgical, precise. The enemy dismounts were scattering, but the A-10 was already repositioning, banking hard, coming around for another pass. He'd seen close air support before. He'd worked with F-16s, F-18s, even B-1 bombers dropping JDAMs. But this was different. This was personal. This was someone who understood exactly where his men were, and exactly how close she could push without crossing the line into friendly fire. Dagger 1, Hawkeye 7, first vehicle group neutralized. I have dismounts fleeing south. Do you want me to pursue or hold station? Rourke keyed his mic. Hawkeye 7, pursue. Don't let them regroup. Copy, pursuing. The third pass was lower. Alara descended to 4,000 feet, low enough that she could see individual figures running across the scree. The targeting computer fed her solutions, but she overrode it, trusting her eyes, trusting muscle memory built over 10,000 flight hours. She walked the cannon fire across the ridge, watching the impact stitch through rock and flesh. Clinical, efficient, no wasted ammunition, no excessive force, just enough. In her earpiece, the JTAC frequency was exploding with chatter. Other units across the theater had picked up the gunfire, were asking who was flying Hawkeye 7, what ordnance was being used, how the hell someone was making danger-close passes in terrain like this. Alara ignored it. Mission first. Ego never. That had been the other thing her father taught her, back before the cancer took him, before she joined the Air Force to honor a legacy he'd never asked her to carry. She pulled up, gaining altitude, scanning for additional threats. The valley was clearing. Smoke rose from the destroyed vehicles. The enemy dismounts were gone, either dead or running too fast to regroup. Below, in the riverbed, Rourke's team was moving, bounding by fire teams toward the extraction point. The operation was still hot, but the immediate threat was broken. Dagger 1, Hawkeye 7, targets neutralized. I'm holding station overhead. You're clear to move. Rourke's response came through strained, breathless. Hawkeye 7, solid copy, that was. Goddamn, what's your station time? Alara checked her fuel gauge. I can give you 40 minutes. Roger, we're moving now. Hawkeye 7, thank you. She didn't respond. Gratitude was fine, but it didn't change the fuel math or the fact that she was alone over hostile territory with no backup and a jet that topped out at 350 knots. She circled, watching the friendlies move, her eyes scanning for threats. The sky was empty. The radio was quieter now, the initial chaos fading into the operational rhythm of extraction. And in that quiet, Alara felt the familiar weight settle back onto her shoulders. The weight of being competent in a system that didn't want her competence. The weight of being excellent when mediocrity would have been safer. She thought about the board review, the one that would come after this mission. The questions, the scrutiny, the same scrutiny that had followed her since the Kandahar incident when she disobeyed a direct order and saved 19 Marines at the cost of her career trajectory. They'd never said it explicitly, but the message was clear. Be good, but not too good. Be reliable, but not indispensable. Don't make the men uncomfortable. She pushed the thoughts away. Below, Rourke's team was 2 clicks from the extraction point. The helicopters were inbound. Her job was almost done. Then her radar warning receiver screamed. The tone was high-pitched, insistent, the kind of sound that turned blood to ice. Alara's eyes snapped to her instruments. A surface-to-air missile system had locked onto her aircraft. SA-7 by the signature old Soviet tech, but still deadly. She dumped chaff and flares, banking hard left, feeling the G-forces crush her into the seat. The missile climbed, arcing toward her, trailing white smoke. Her countermeasures bloomed like fireworks, burning phosphorus filling the sky. The missile tracked one of the flares, detonating 200 meters away. The shockwave buffeted the A-10, but the airframe held. Dagger 1, Hawkeye 7 is taking SAM fire. I have a missile launch from the northwest quadrant. Probable MA and PADS. Rourke's voice came back urgent. Hawkeye 7, get clear, we'll handle it. But Alara was already maneuvering, descending, using the terrain to mask her profile. The SA-7 was shoulder-fired, which meant someone on the ground with a launcher. If she left, they'd use it on the extraction helicopters. Basic tactical math. She keyed her mic. Negative, Dagger 1. If I leave, that shooter will engage your birds. I'm hunting him. She didn't wait for approval. The A-10 dropped low, hugging the ridge tops, her eyes scanning for the missile signature. There. A puff of smoke rising from a cluster of boulders northwest of the extraction point. She locked it visually, armed a Maverick missile from her wing pylon. The AGM-65 was overkill for a single shooter, but she didn't have time for precision. She fired. The Maverick streaked away, its rocket motor burning bright. It covered the distance in seconds, slamming into the boulder cluster with a detonation that lifted rock and dust 300 feet into the air. When the smoke cleared, there was only a crater. Dagger 1 threat neutralized. Your LZ is clear. Silence on the radio, then Rourke's voice quieter now. Who the hell are you? Alara almost smiled. Hawkeye 7, just doing my job. She climbed back to altitude, circling until the extraction helicopters arrived. 2 Blackhawks, flying fast and low, their door gunners scanning for threats. They dropped into the LZ, loaded Rourke's team in under 90 seconds and lifted off. Alara stayed overhead until they were clear, then turned east, back toward base. Her fuel was critical now, but she'd make it. She always did. The debrief room at Forward Operating Base Salerno was too small and smelled like stale coffee and unwashed flight suits. Alara sat alone at a plastic table, filling out after-action paperwork with the kind of meticulous detail that annoyed her superiors and protected her from theirs. She'd landed 20 minutes ago, her jet refueled and rearmed by a ground crew who didn't make eye contact. Standard. She was used to it. The door opened. A colonel she didn't recognize stepped in, followed by Rourke. The captain looked different without his kit, smaller somehow, but his eyes were sharp. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. You're Hawkeye 7. Major Alara Kine. Rourke extended his hand. She shook it. His grip was firm, respectful. I owe you a case of whatever you drink. Water's fine. The colonel cleared his throat. He was older, maybe 50, with the kind of face that had seen too many funerals. Major Kine, I'm Colonel Hardwick, Theater Air Operations. I've been reviewing your mission profile. Those gun runs were exceptional. Danger close in that terrain with those wind conditions. I don't know many pilots who could have made those shots. Alara kept her expression neutral. Thank you, sir. Where'd you train? Tucson, Davis Monthan. Who was your instructor? Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Voss, retired now. Hardwick nodded slowly. Voss, she was one of the first female A-10 pilots, good lineage. Alara said nothing. She knew where this was going. The compliment followed by the question. The question followed by the scrutiny. It was always the same dance. Rourke broke the silence. Sir, with respect, I don't care where she trained. She saved my team. I want her on call for any operation I run in this sector. Hardwick glanced at him. That's not your decision, Captain. Then whose is it? The colonel's jaw tightened. Alara watched the exchange with the detachment of someone who'd seen this fight play out before. Rourke didn't understand yet. Competence wasn't the issue. It never had been. Hardwick pulled a folder from under his arm, dropped it on the table. Major Kine, we need to discuss Kandahar. There it was. Alara felt her chest tighten, but her face remained stone. What about it? You disobeyed a direct order from your forward air controller. You engaged targets outside your assigned sector. You nearly caused a blue-on-blue incident. I saved 19 Marines who would have died if I'd followed that order. You can't know that. Yes, sir, I can. Rourke looked between them, confusion tightening his features. What's he talking about? Alara kept her eyes on Hardwick. 7 years ago, I was flying close air support during an operation near Kandahar. My FAC ordered me to engage a building that intelligence said was full of Taliban fighters. I did a visual pass first, standard procedure. Saw children in the courtyard. I refused the order. The FAC escalated to his commander. I still refused. 20 minutes later, Marines moved in and cleared the building. 19 hostages, mostly women and kids. 0 Taliban. But the intelligence was wrong. Alara's voice was flat. It's wrong sometimes. That's why pilots verify. Hardwick closed the folder. The review board agreed with your decision, but they noted your tendency to override your chain of command, to trust your judgment over mission parameters. My judgment was correct. This time, yes. In Kandahar, yes. But that kind of independence is dangerous, Major. In a military structure, we need pilots who follow orders. Rourke stepped forward, his voice hard. Sir, you're seriously reprimanding her for saving lives. I'm reminding her that there are protocols. Protocols? Rourke's laugh was bitter. Colonel, I've been in firefights from Fallujah to Helmand. I've worked with pilots who followed protocols right into body bags. That woman up there made split-second decisions that kept my team alive. If you can't see the value in that, then you're looking at the wrong metrics. Hardwick turned, his face reddening. Captain, you're out of line. Maybe, but I'm alive, and my men are alive. That's the only metric I care about. Alara stood. Gentlemen, if we're done here, I have maintenance checks to oversee. Hardwick waved her off. Dismissed, Major, but this conversation isn't over. She left without saluting. Outside, the sun was setting, turning the mountains into black silhouettes against an orange sky. She walked toward the flight line, her boots crunching on gravel. Behind her, she heard Rourke's voice calling. Major, wait. She stopped but didn't turn. He caught up, breathing hard. What he said in there, is that why you're flying alone, why you're stuck on milk runs? Alara finally looked at him. What do you think? I think the military is run by cowards who don't know talent when it saves their asses. Careful, Captain. That kind of talk will get you the same treatment. I don't care. He shook his head. Look, I don't know what political bullshit you've been dealing with, but I know what I saw up there today. You're the best pilot I've ever worked with, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Alara almost smiled. Don't, it won't help me and it'll hurt you. Maybe, but it's the right thing. She studied him for a moment, seeing the earnestness in his eyes, the naivety of someone who still believed the system rewarded merit. She'd been like that once, before Kandahar, before the board reviews and the reassignments and the slow realization that being exceptional was sometimes a liability. "Good luck, Captain," she said quietly, then turned and walked away. The story broke 3 days later, not through official channels but through the networks that mattered more. The encrypted chat rooms where operators traded stories, the Reddit forums where military enthusiasts analyzed combat footage, the Twitter threads where veterans dissected tactics. Someone had leaked the radio recordings from Rourke's extraction. The gun runs, the SAM engagement, Alara's calm, precise voice cutting through chaos. Within 24 hours, #Hawkeye7 was trending. Within 48, news outlets were asking the Pentagon for comment. Alara learned about it from her squadron commander, a lieutenant colonel named Briggs who looked like he'd swallowed glass. He called her into his office, closed the door, and played the audio on his laptop. The recording was surprisingly clear. Her voice, Rourke's responses, the sound of the GAU-8 in the background, that distinctive roar that made even the recording software distort. "This is a problem," Briggs said. Alara kept her face neutral. "Sir, you're becoming notable. That brings scrutiny." "I did my job." "You did it too well." He leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Look, Kine, I don't have a problem with you. I think you're a hell of a pilot, but there are people above me who don't want complications. A female pilot going viral for heroics. It creates pressure. Questions about why you're not flying more missions, why you're not getting promoted, why you've been stuck in rotation hell for 7 years. Maybe they should answer those questions." Briggs sighed. "You know how this works. The moment this becomes political, everyone loses. The feminists will say you're being discriminated against. The traditionalists will say you're being promoted beyond your ability because of quotas. The truth, that you're just a damn good pilot who got screwed by bad luck and worse optics, that truth gets lost." Alara stood. "Permission to speak freely, sir." "Granted." "I don't care about politics. I don't care about being viral. I care about flying, about keeping people alive. If that's too complicated for the Air Force, then maybe I'm in the wrong service." Briggs looked at her for a long moment. "Be careful, Major. This attention. It can go either way. It can lift you up or it can bury you deeper. And right now, I don't know which way it's going to break." She left his office without responding. Outside, the flight line was busy, F-16s taking off for patrol missions, refueling tankers lumbering into the sky. She walked to her assigned aircraft, the same A-10 she'd flown on the extraction, now patched and serviced. The crew chief, a staff sergeant named Alvarez, was inspecting the cannon assembly. He looked up as she approached. "Major, heard you're famous now." "I'm not famous, I'm just doing my job." Alvarez smiled. "Well, whatever you call it, the ground crews are talking. That gun run you made. It's in the training manuals already. Instructors are using the footage to teach danger-close protocols." Alara felt something twist in her chest. Pride, maybe, or irony. "They teach it, but they don't let me fly it." "That's the Air Force for you. Promote the tactics, bury the tactician." He patted the aircraft's fuselage. "She's ready when you are. Full load, clean wings. Wherever you're going next, she'll get you there." "Thanks, Alvarez." He nodded and walked away. Alara stood alone beside the aircraft, one hand resting on the landing gear. The metal was warm from the sun. Above, the sky was a perfect blue, empty except for contrails from distant jets. She thought about her father, about the ranch in Montana, about clay pigeons exploding against that same blue. He told her once that the only validation worth having was the kind you gave yourself. That external recognition was fleeting, but self-respect was permanent. She'd saved 12 men. That was the only number that mattered. The rest was noise. The noise got louder. Within a week, journalists were requesting interviews. A documentary crew wanted access. A book agent emailed her personal address, somehow obtained, offering a 6-figure advance for her memoirs. Alara ignored all of it. She flew her assigned missions, reconnaissance, transport, escort, patrol, and returned to base without comment. But the attention was metastasizing, spreading through the military community like a virus. Pilots she'd never met were asking to fly with her. Ground units were requesting her by name. And in the Pentagon, people were having very uncomfortable conversations about what to do with a hero they'd tried to forget. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source, a Navy SEAL commander named Keller, who'd heard the recordings and wanted Hawkeye 7 for an operation in the Hindu Kush. Keller had the kind of reputation that made colonels nervous. He got results, but he didn't care about politics or protocol. When he wanted something, he went straight to the top, which is how Ilara found herself in a secure video conference with a three-star general she'd only seen in official photos. General Marcus Webb looked like Central Casting's version of a warrior, square jaw, silver hair, chest full of ribbons. But his eyes were sharp, evaluative. He studied Ilara through the screen for a full 10 seconds before speaking. "Major Kine, I've been reading your file." "Yes, sir." "Impressive record, top marks in training, exceptional flight hours, consistent high ratings from every commander you've served under, and yet here you are flying support missions out of Salerno instead of leading a squadron." He paused. "Want to tell me why?" Ilara chose her words carefully. "I made decisions that some people found uncomfortable, sir." "Kandahar." "Yes, sir." Webb leaned forward. "I reviewed that incident. You disobeyed an order. You could have been court-martialed." "I saved 19 lives, sir." "You did, and that's why you weren't court-martialed, but it put you on a list. The list of pilots who can't be trusted to follow the mission plan. The list of people who think they're smarter than the system." He let that hang in the air. "Are you smarter than the system, Major?" Ilara met his eyes through the screen. "No, sir, but I'm better than a bad order." Webb smiled. It wasn't warm, but it was genuine. "Fair answer. Commander Keller wants you for a high-risk operation. Deep in hostile territory, minimal support, maximum danger. He thinks you're the only pilot who can pull it off. I think he might be right, but I need to know you can follow orders when it matters." "I can follow good orders, sir. I won't follow bad ones." "That's what worries me." Ilara said nothing. The general studied her again, then glanced at something off-screen. When he looked back, his expression had shifted, become almost resigned. "The world is changing, Major. The military is changing. We can't afford to waste talent anymore, even if that talent makes us uncomfortable. Keller's operation launches in 72 hours. You're assigned. Don't make me regret this." The screen went black. Ilara sat alone in the briefing room, her heart pounding. 72 hours. She had no idea what the operation was, but if Keller wanted her, it wasn't going to be easy. She stood, smoothed her flight suit, and walked toward the door. Outside, the sun was setting again, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. For the first time in 7 years, she felt something like hope. The briefing for Keller's operation was held in a SCIF, a sensitive compartmented information facility buried under 3 layers of concrete and guarded by Marines who looked like they'd been carved from granite. Ilara entered with her clearance badge and was directed to a conference room where Keller and his team were already assembled. 8 SEALs, all of them watching her with expressions ranging from curiosity to skepticism. Keller himself was smaller than she'd expected, maybe 5'10", but he moved with the coiled readiness of someone who'd spent his life in violence. "Major Kine, thanks for coming." He gestured to an empty chair. "Have a seat. Let's talk about how we're all going to survive the next week." Ilara sat. The briefing materials were already laid out: topographical maps, satellite imagery, target folders. She scanned them quickly, her mind cataloging details. The target was a compound in the Nuristan province, high in the mountains, accessible only by air or a week-long trek through Taliban-controlled territory. Intelligence said it was being used as a planning site for a major attack. Something big enough that stopping it was worth the risk of inserting a SEAL team into one of the most hostile regions on Earth. Keller walked her through the plan. His team would fast-rope from helicopters under cover of darkness, hit the compound, extract intelligence and high-value targets, then exfiltrate to a landing zone 10 clicks away. The helicopters would be vulnerable during insertion and extraction. They'd need air cover. Specifically, they'd need someone who could keep enemy reinforcements away from the LZ long enough for the Blackhawks to pick up the team. That's where you come in, Keller said. The nearest enemy positions are a fire base 3 clicks north. They've got mortars, technical vehicles, and enough manpower to overrun the LZ if they realize we're there. Your job is to keep them pinned. If they try to move, you stop them. If they try to mortar us, you take out their tubes. If they breathe wrong, you light them up. Clear. Crystal, Alara said, what's my station time? From wheels up to extraction, approximately 90 minutes. Can you hold that long? She did the math in her head. Fuel, ammunition, contingencies. Yes, but I'll need a tanker for the flight back. Already arranged. You'll have 2 F-16s as top cover in case enemy air shows up, but you're the primary. This whole operation hinges on you keeping that LZ secure. Alara looked at the map again, studying the terrain. Mountains, narrow valleys, limited maneuvering room. If she had to engage multiple targets, she'd be flying in a kill box with no easy escape. It was the kind of mission that ended careers, one way or another. I'll need to do a terrain flight reconnaissance, she said. Before the operation, study the approaches, identify fallback positions. Keller nodded. We can arrange that, anything else. Rules of engagement. Weapons free on anything north of the compound. South is friendly territory mostly, but use your judgment. If something feels wrong, engage it. There it was again, that phrase, use your judgment. The same thing they'd punished her for in Kandahar, now being used as mission doctrine. Alara almost laughed. Understood, she said. The briefing continued for another hour, covering contingencies, communications protocols, emergency procedures. By the end, Alara had memorized every detail, every coordinate, every possible failure point. Keller dismissed his team but gestured for her to stay. When they were alone, he leaned against the table, arms crossed. I heard what happened to you after Kandahar, he said quietly. The way they buried you, it's bullshit. It's politics. Same thing, he studied her. I don't care about politics, I care about results. My men are going into hell and I need to know they're coming back. Can you do that? Alara met his eyes. Yes. Good, because if anything happens to them, I will personally hunt down whoever screwed up. That includes you. Understood. Keller smiled just a flicker. I don't think it will, though. I've seen your file. The real one, not the sanitized version they show promotion boards. You're one of the best pilots in the Air Force. It's a crime you're not already flying for SOCOM full-time. Maybe after this I will be. Maybe, or maybe they'll find another way to bury you. He pushed off the table. Either way, thanks for doing this. My team deserves the best, and for once they're getting it. He left. Alara sat alone in the conference room, staring at the maps. 90 minutes, 1 aircraft, 8 lives depending on her. It was the kind of pressure that should have terrified her, but instead she felt calm, focused. This was what she'd trained for, what she was built for. She pulled out her phone, scrolled to her father's contact. Still there, even though he'd been dead for 5 years. She typed a message she'd never send. Dad, I'm doing the thing you taught me, trusting my judgment. Wish you were here to see it. She deleted the message, pocketed the phone, and left the SCIF. Outside, night had fallen. The stars were so bright they looked close enough to touch. Somewhere in those mountains, Keller's team was preparing. And in 72 hours, Alara would be in the sky above them, holding the line between mission success and catastrophic failure. She was ready. The reconnaissance flight happened at dawn, 2 days before the operation. Alara flew alone, her A-10 stripped of unnecessary ordnance to extend range and endurance. She approached the Nuristan province from the east, staying low, using the terrain to mask her radar signature. The mountains rose around her like ancient gods, snow-capped peaks glowing pink in the early light, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. She circled the target compound first, marking positions, studying sight lines. The compound was a cluster of stone buildings on a plateau, surrounded by terraced fields that hadn't been farmed in years. Good defensive position. Limited approaches. She noted the fire base to the north that Keller had mentioned, 3 bunkers, mortar pits, what looked like a ZPU anti-aircraft gun mounted on a flatbed truck. Serious hardware. She marked the coordinates, filed them in her mental catalog. Then she flew the ingress and egress routes the helicopters would use. Narrow valleys, barely wide enough for a Black Hawk to maneuver. If the enemy got mortars or rockets into those valleys during insertion or extraction, the mission would fail catastrophically. Her job would be to make sure that didn't happen. She studied every ridge, every possible firing position, every place an ambush could materialize. By the time she returned to base, she'd been in the air for 4 hours and had memorized every meter of terrain. Back in her quarters, she sketched the area from memory, annotating altitudes, wind patterns, engagement angles. Then she lay on her bunk and closed her eyes, running the mission in her mind, visualizing every possible contingency, every way it could go wrong. She didn't sleep. She rarely did before big operations. Instead, she thought about the men she'd be protecting. Keller's SEALs, professionals but also human. They had families, hopes, dreams, just like the Marines in Kandahar, just like Rourke's team. Every time she flew, she carried their lives with her. It was a weight that never got lighter. Her phone buzzed, a message from Rourke. "Heard you're flying with Keller. Good luck. Don't let them pin you down afterward. You're too good for that." She typed a response, "Thanks, take care of yourself." She set the phone aside and went back to visualization. 90 minutes, 1 aircraft, everything had to be perfect.